Thank you. So my name is Sarah and I work in the Kainos customer team, and I'm joined by three great customers here today in Jen, Sarah and Judith, who are all going to introduce themselves to you now. So I'll go by the order that I can see on screen, and Jen, if you want to take it away.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sarah. So Jen Gresham, I am the Associate Vice President in Technology for Business Solutions and Strategy at Simmons University in Boston, Massachusetts.
Okay. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Now, happy to give more on that. Basically, oversee the portfolio of all non-academic technology cloud systems.
Brilliant. And then Judith.
Oop, I have to unmute. Sorry. I'm the Assistant Vice President of Systems at Southeastern Louisiana University in Hammond, Louisiana. We oversee ERP systems, and we're kind of a functional technical group.
Perfect. And then Sarah.
I'm Sarah Forshee from The Ohio State University, and I am a technical release consultant on the Workday support team. We've been live since January 2021 and been working with Workday for about 7 years now.
Great. Yeah, you mentioned there the 7 years. I think when I worked it out earlier, we have almost 18 years of combined Workday experience here on the call. So a real wealth of knowledge and information here today. So let's get right into it. So I'm going to start with my first question. And this is really going to be addressed to you all on panelists, because I'm sure you've all have an opinion and real experience with this. So, we often hear from our higher education customer population that they share very common challenges, which are very different to those experienced by corporations. I think that's fair to say. So in your opinion, what's different about being a Workday customer in this sector, and what unique challenges do you think that brings?
From a Southeastern's perspective, we're a state school, so funding and budgeting is our biggest challenge, probably. Change is probably the second. Higher ed seems to be resistant to change, so you have to kind of manage that. But that's our top two challenges whenever it's coming to a system or anything like that, and resources, which fits with budgetary.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the biggest challenge that I've seen is the complexity of higher education in an ERP space. When working with an ERP system, the variety of universities, colleges of different sizes, complexities, shapes, there is no one size fits all for a solution for that type of higher education, as it were. So when we present an issue, when we present a complex situation, it's not the same as what's happening at one of these other great universities or schools that are on the call with us now, or any of the other hundreds that are out there, or thousands that are out there.
Sarah?
And in addition to the things that Jen and Judy mentioned, with at the university level, we're also dealing with FERPA, GLBA, and HIPAA guidelines and regulations with respect to our data, and making sure that we provide the care and the security that we need to for those affected data elements.
Yeah, so it's, thanks for that insight. I think it's clear to say there are some very commonalities across the board. We've mentioned budgets and funding, and not one size fits all, down to data privacy and security. So just to everyone on the call here today, you're here because you're experiencing challenges too, and you're probably interested in hearing more about how automation can help with those current challenges. So very keen just to delve into that for a second, just to find out what those key challenges are. And I think that will help our panelists. I think you'd agree, Jen and Sarah and Judith, to understand the main drivers for people coming on, and help shape your conversation as we move through today. So I'm just going to launch a quick poll, if you don't mind. And this is all about the main challenges your organizations are facing, which are impacting your Workday teams. So I'm just going to leave this up for a second, and if you just wouldn't mind answering your key challenges there, please. This is great, lots of answers coming in here, and some real standout ones as well. We have complex organizational structures there. The lean team is a big one too. So yeah, lots of different, but it's great to, it's interesting to see that all of them, seem to be a challenge, I suppose. There's none there that nobody has answered. So I'm just going to end that poll and share the results so you can all see them. So just for Jen, Sarah, Judith, any surprises there at the results?
No,
Not really, not really.
not at all. And I'm not surprised that everything is out there.
Okay, well, that's great.
A little curious what other responses are.
Oh, maybe they could let us know in the chat. That would be great. Okay, so another one for you all then, just before we get into sort of individual questions. Higher education organizations, it's really fair to say they often have very hefty cyclical academic calendar of events, and really managing that on top of your business priorities and your other workday change can be a challenge. So, it's all pressures, it's all adding, to the pressures to your team. So can all of you maybe give some advice on and give, any takeaways that you would have on how you manage that?
So one of the things that we've done is we have created an organizational structure of governance around Workday itself and the changes that happen in Workday. And through that, we've been able to create a hybrid model of basically change management around the Workday system. That has been really beneficial to us so that the pressure for any changes that happen in the system, any changes that are necessary, can be spread out around the different levels. So if it's just student, then the decisions land in just the student layer. If it's all encompassing and needs to go all the way up to the executive technology steering committee, then it goes all the way up to that or lands anywhere in between.
And from, again, the resources are obviously our biggest challenge. So automation lends right into that. But the structure, as both Jen and Sarah have said, is very different from a non-higher ed. The academic presence and the academic goals, which is to educate students, give them the quality education, is number one at all universities. And so it's kind of difficult at times to see, to invest in the infrastructure that supports that, because you don't see it. You see lack of it, but you don't see the investment that goes into building a good infrastructure to support all that. And the smart audit that we've just now implemented with the Workday security model, it's very complex and difficult to track, understand. And we're just getting started with smart audit, but it does systematically what you could not as a human do real time, because it's doing and monitoring the changes and the things that go on, that by the time you pull that out and evaluated it from a human perspective, you couldn't affect it.
Yeah, and Sarah?
I guess I would, talk more about, automation and testing and, relying on that to help free up, your resources. Because again, we all have resource constraints, to be able to spend time doing other things as opposed to, manual testing.
Yeah, you're right there. So, everybody has their day job, and then, you add testing into that, and especially around the, joining time and all that kind of stuff. And I suppose for you all, automation releases that burden on your end users. So, Jen, I just want to come back to you because you'd asked what the other answer was in the poll. So we have someone had mentioned on the call here that they'd answered thinking about this challenge, and that was understanding legacy technical decision making. and how that has fallen out of alignment with policy and compliance. So ringing any bells there?
Absolutely. Anybody who's coming out of a legacy system into Workday and adding on. So we found this when we added on student more than I think when we went to HCM FinPay, but having everything in the same system put what I'm calling the lighthouse effect onto the systems. Things that had been perhaps hidden were now coming to light, because when you have everything in the same system, the data errors, the legacy challenges, the legacy decision-making that you're referencing, all of a sudden, some of those things came to light with a really big spotlight. And then how do you handle that is something that your institution really does need to figure out, and won't figure out quickly.
The conversion does air dirty laundry, as they say, because again, you know, you're coming from a relational database or whatever system you came from, and you probably had the ability to manipulate, bolt on, whatever you want to call it, for those special circumstances that really were not part of an ERP, but that you made part of the ERP. And now you have to figure out, what are we going to do with that? So, you know, the conversion, it is a totally different mindset in a cloud-based from an on-premise that we found. And we're currently implementing student. And so obviously, because of the complexity of student and the number of modules that are involved, it's going to be a lot more challenges in how to convert legacy data from 20 years of being in that system to what you're currently going to do. So, you know, that mapping and that conversion you will learn a lot in the process, and what you're doing, and how you have to make some decisions to make the data fit that you won't think of till you do the conversion. You can't.
That's great. Thank you, Hazel, for letting us know that. So, you know, you've touched there on automation, and I know, you know, Sarah, you talked about the testing, and Judy, you mentioned the smart audit. So all automation solutions that really help with that wider support and compliance delivery. So Jen, there's a question in for you here. And if you were to pick your big drivers that led you to explore solutions like Kainos, what were they?
I'm going to say the biggest one for us was probably, so when we went to HCM Fin and Pay, we started that process back in, 2014. So small university, small team, looking for ways to best support testing of what I'm going to say a fairly early adoption of Workday in higher ed. And when we decided to pick up Kainos, it was really, how can we support this small team and what was then a very dispersed support model of that platform product. And I mean, frankly, it's been a godsend. Automated testing has really freed up a lot of our staff. So that, I would say, that was the biggest driver for us, was that the freedom of the staff to pay attention to things that weren't literally week to week, day to day testing.
Yeah, Jen, I think we hear that a lot. You know, it's that SME time, you know, particularly during the update windows, for example. And so, you know, I'm glad you said that it's freeing up that time, and you know, taking off that manual burden for your SME. So thanks for touching there on you know, the smart testing and the automated testing and how that helps. Judith, I'm going to come to you, because you had mentioned there about smart audit. So Smart Audit is another automation solution, and you know, as a user of Smart Test, you've recently expanded your use of Smart then to include the Smart audit, and you're getting ready to deploy that. Can you talk us a bit about what led you to that, and what you hope to achieve with the solution?
We went live with HCM and payroll and financials in January of 2021. We brought the Smart testing in for the same reason, like Jen. It helped from a resource perspective. We saw Smart audit, and Kainos actually did a complimentary Smart audit test in our tenant, and highlighted some things that no one would have known happened in our tenant without this tool. And so at that point, and at the same time, we were trying to roll out a hybrid governance model. And that was new to the university. Before, the university had IT, and then they had the functionals. And at that time, my area was kind of more functional, but it also provided a way for us to show from an audit perspective, because we have legislative auditors come in, and obviously internal control, all these things are on their list to tick off, that we had a product and that we were doing due diligence and standard periodical testing, and we're monitoring things that happen in the system. Like instead of preventative check, it really is showing what's happening. And you find out a lot of that when you have that shared hybrid model, because communication is not always as good as we would all like it to be, because obviously everybody has their jobs. And we did have a security incident back in the spring, that obviously when you have one, it causes a lot of interruption when you're so used to technology being a solution, and you can't get to technology because you had a security incident that you're trying to work through. And so then the Smart audit also kind of filled in a gap there that, okay, here's a tool that we can at least see when things are being changed or done in the system. Not that it would have prevented the incident, but just as an additional layer of due diligence in protecting data and protecting the system, and just with the limited resources we had. So those factors are kind of what pushed us to Smart audit. We had already been looking at it, and we'd already been interested in it, but it pushed it to the forefront. And so now we're living that again. The first time it was run, we found things that, just because of busyness and not communicating as quickly or as well, things that were done that my area didn't know, and we're over security. So, things that are very helpful, that you just don't have time to go dig through the system and pull this out.
I think that you said a really good thing there, really good quote. It's just that additional layer of due diligence, and I really liked that. And I'll come to you, Sarah, because you're also currently onboarding something which is an additional layer, I suppose, for you. So in Ohio State, your team, they're currently onboarding with Smart Shield, which is a data masking solution for Workday. So can you briefly talk, I suppose, about the importance and the need for data masking within the higher education sector?
Sure. So for the Workday infrastructure or ecosystem, all of your non-production tenants are copies of production. And we have people with elevated access in our non-production environment. So there is a need to mask certain things that they wouldn't normally see because of that elevated access.
That's great. Yeah, thank you very much for explaining a bit there about the shield. So we will talk a wee bit more about that later on today. So Judith, a question has come in for you, and it says that and it's actually pointing out one of the common challenges that we've already discussed is the budget constraints. So it was about understanding how to get buy-in. So how can we build a business case that's it's a complete unknown? As a finance leader, where should someone start in that position?
The buy-in was a combination between IT, excuse me a minute, between IT and finance. Don't have an incident, but the incident did help. You don't want, excuse me. You don't want to have the incident just to get it done, but I can tell you that the incident raised the awareness of of the need. But we had a good partnership already between the CIO and the Vice President of Administration and Finance. So it was a cooperative effort.
Thank you. So we'll just keep on that theme of security. So in terms of your Workday configuration and security, and this is for all of you, how are you currently ensuring that visibility and confidence that your data is secure and correctly configured?
It's an ongoing, for us, it's an ongoing evaluation. We've instituted an annual review of roles that the data owners actually review also, because to me, the biggest challenge of security is not a new employee, but people that move around. Because you don't always know when they transfer positions. And if they have those user-based roles, they go with them. So to me, that's the biggest risk, because the role based on a new employee, those are pretty good. But if you have individuals that transfer around and they do have or have the need for a user-based role, they may not anymore. And those are the ones that are kind of hard to catch.
And that's actually one of my favorite parts of Smart Test, with the weekly testing and running through the BPs, and the way we have all of our BPs set up to test all of the security packs. They're catching things that we never would have. Somebody has moved a job, or somebody has added security, especially if you have people other than your security admin and technology doing some of those assignments. All of a sudden, somebody has a new security role that you didn't expect them to have, and Smart catches it. We're like, oh, that's interesting. Or they changed jobs and we didn't know they were changing jobs, or they got terminated and we didn't know they were getting terminated. And all of that stuff is caught. Well, I won't say all of it, but I would say a good 90% of it is caught by our Smart tests, because we've been able to manipulate them over the years. We've had tests in play for almost definitely 4 years now, almost 5. So
that's brilliant, Jen.
One thing we found with security was that when you're implementing, security is much wider open to more people, and sometimes that step of going into production and gearing back the security to what it should be in just production mode doesn't always happen. So, in implementation, you may have some end users that are in, for whatever reason, administrative roles or roles that do configuration, that if you centralize configuration, everything is just so wild at implementation and going live. That may be one step that's lost, but you find it out in Smart Test because they changed configuration that you didn't know, and now you're getting a fail on a Smart Test because they added something or they did something. And then when you back in, you find these things out that you need to modify and take care of.
And Sarah, just maybe for you as well, then, what additional value do you think that Smart brings to you today?
Well, in terms of validating our data, making sure that it's correct, I would say because we do have payroll, that executing the payroll parallel test at future release time is a great way to ensure that Workday hasn't introduced anything that is going to alter your payroll results significantly. Or we haven't done anything rather, but yeah, I would say that that's one thing that we heavily utilize at feature release time. And we did use um, Kainos Smart for our historical payroll conversion validation as well when we implemented. So we are very comfortable with using the tool for validating payroll results.
And speaking about the payroll, we actually had Kainos configure for us a packet that would go out a year in advance, like calculate payroll for so many future periods, because the faculty had been wanting to have an option to be paid either 10 months or 12 months. And currently it was just a 10-month pay cycle for the faculty. And they wanted the option of being able to be paid over 12 months. And so Kainos built for us an automated package that our payroll director didn't have to go and run that many payrolls, to see if the configuration worked. So it was able to do those payrolls for her to make sure that the full 12-month cycle, we could test that prior to going live. So that was very helpful.
Okay, I have a question into the chat, and don't forget to keep sending them in. I can see a few more coming in, so please do. If you've any, we're obviously got about 10 to 15 minutes left, so please keep sending those questions in. But one has come in, and I think it's for all of you. It said, with automation in place, what else are you and your teams now able to achieve that you couldn't before? That's a good question, sort of like business priority question there.
Oh, I will jump right on this then. So test takes care of that week-to-week regression testing. BP's staffing changes, I mentioned some of that already. Tenant-to-tenant regression testing around major releases. It catches all the security changes, configuration updates, changes to business objects. That's been a big one recently. And it lets us focus on the setup required. It lets us focus on the fixes that are coming out in those service update notes. It's just, so we have been able to address more of our, what I call our post-production list, the things that the staff and the rest of the community are saying, can we have this? And we're like, yes, you can now have it within the next 12 months as opposed to the next 3 years or the next 6 months or something like that. So it really does help us be more customer facing, customer service oriented than just regression testing.
Yeah, love that. Anybody else, Judy or Sarah?
Yeah, I'd like to say that, not only has the automation helped us catch some things or uncover some things, delivered in either the weekly or the feature release, but some things that we've, done on our own in terms of, you can't test everything, but the tool can test more. And so we have uncovered a few things where we didn't necessarily think of testing, a few scenarios with our manual testing, and our weekly testing did catch that and allowed us to correct and move forward.
And I'm sorry, I lost audio and for just a minute, so I lost the last few minutes. I apologize.
Yeah, Judy, it was just to really ask, what else you and your teams are able to achieve now with automation that you couldn't have achieved before. This would not have been possible.
We have a huge whiteboard full of wishes or needs, wants, that we can start trying to chip away at. Our student implementations kind of put that on hold a little bit, but we may be able to get back to some of those, and then we're able to uptake. We're able to look at more of the updates and uptake some of those that are optional that we wouldn't be able to look at. You know, you have to obviously address the ones that are automatic, but for a while, were just addressing those. And the ones that had setup required or that weren't automatic, we weren't really uptaking those as a course. So.
Great.
Sarah, can I just add one more thing?
Yes, please. No, absolutely.
Because I think it's valuable for folks to understand that, you know, Sarah alluded to it earlier, but actually Judy did too. We can configure Smart Test to test other things, or we can put it into another tenant besides Sandbox. So if we're say redesigning the university, or we're building out some position budget, or whatever it is that you're taking on as your next project, you can run Smart Test against it. You can pick up some of the packs, create some test scenarios to see if you've set it up correctly, or if there are BP checks that you need to do before you can get it into Sandbox or production. Makes a huge difference. We've taken advantage of that quite a bit.
Thank you. I've got one more question here, and it said, we've recently deployed Workday. So if you were to start all over again, what would you do differently? Feels like there might have been a few lessons learned there. So yeah, what would you do differently?
For platform or for student? Those are very different questions.
However you want to answer it, Jen. Yeah. What about, you know, you've seen the benefits, I suppose, of automation and Smart Test. Would you have maybe used a tool like Smart Test, you know, within your deployment?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. If we would have known that Smart Test existed, you know, with the implementation, I think it would have helped tremendously with implementation testing, because again, resource-wise and just people not very familiar with the system to begin with. So not even really knowing to what level to take the testing. You know, human resources adds a new job code, they test it, looks good to them, but until you go through payroll, you don't know that it works. So, you know, the Smart Testing would have been able to do that easily.
So I think that's all the questions in the chat. So we are nearing time. So I suppose one that I want to ask is really any kind of final piece of parting advice for everyone on the call today.
See, fight for getting some additional resources if you can. Don't give up. I've been told no a lot, but it doesn't stop me from asking, and the right opportunity will present itself to show, because obviously no one is in the green, as they say, anymore. Everyone, regardless if they're private, if they're state, if whatever, resources and budget are a concern in today's world. So you know, it's hard to convince someone of more of a soft savings, in essence, like, you know, if we do this, we can't eliminate 5 positions, so it can't pay for itself. You just get better quality. That's hard to sell whenever there's budget dollars, but it will benefit. It will benefit the universities by having the automation.
Yeah, it frees us up to do things that are in a lot of places considered day-to-day work. The business case of Smart has run 1.5 million tests for us this year. We couldn't do 1.5 million tests in a decade. It just would never happen, not with the size team we have. And catching, even on student, catching business object changes that would have blown out a significant number of our reports, the time it would have taken us to fix that. So what we have done is every time it comes up for renewal, somebody says, do we need this? And I have the numbers ready because we do. Because the alternative is not acceptable for us. We don't have the time to do otherwise.
That's an unbelievable figure, Jen, absolutely. And Sarah, just any final piece of advice for you and how automation helps you and your teams?
Well, I would say that once you have the tools, make sure you've got, your change champions that are excited and, are, your greatest advocate for the tool, because that will help you, in the long run, when it comes up time for renewal, and they can be one of your biggest assets.
Brilliant. Well, I think there's no more questions in the chat. So thank you all very much for your questions today. Just to touch a little bit more then on Kainos and who we are and our smart solutions just before we wrap up. So we do work with leading higher education institutions, just like the ones you see on screen here, who really trust Kainos and Kainos Smart to safeguard their Workday operations, including 12 of the top universities in the US, 6 leading R1 doctoral universities, and then we have 75% of the Ivy League colleges who have Workday as well. So some great names there. And just some more on the solutions that you would have heard about today, because I know we touched on quite a few. We have Smart Test there, which is the automated testing tool, as the panelists said, just reducing their testing effort by up to 90%. Then with Smart Audit, which Judy was talking about, that always on security monitoring, and that covers the likes of user access control, segregation of duties, for example. And then we have Smart Shield, which I know, Sarah, you discussed, which is the data masking solution for Workday, and that works with the like of Workday proxy. So some fantastic automation solutions for you. If you would like any more information on any of these solutions, just please do indicate that in the survey, which will happen at the end. So just, nearing time, but we've had some really interesting perspectives here today across HR and finance. And as Judy mentioned, business buy-in can be difficult. It can be a challenge, and it's really knowing where to begin. So we'd love to partner with you and help you get started on that journey with your business case. So as a thank you for joining us today, we are offering these 30-minute value sessions, value workshops on us. And these are with Workday experts, and we'll cover articulating your current challenges and really how to build that successful ROI case for your key stakeholders. So just scan the barcode you see on screen, and there will be lots more information on what those workshops are, and then we can be in touch to book that in. Or if it's quicker and easier, you might just want to indicate your preference in a quick poll here, which I'm just going to launch. And that would be, if you'd like to avail of those workshops, you can also book it in that way rather than going through the scanning, and we'll contact you at the end as well.